Welcome to our channel, and today we are talking about a quiet threat that scares almost every family after 70. Most people think memory fades because time simply wins, but that is not the full story. In this video, you will discover the 3 things your brain needs more than anything else, why so many older adults miss them, and the changes that may help protect memory, sharpen thinking, and keep your mind engaged longer daily. Most people over 70 are told to fear one thing above all else, and that one thing is memory loss. They are told to watch for forgotten names, misplaced keys, repeated questions, and those frightening moments when a thought feels just out of reach. But here is the shocking part. The aging brain usually does not fail all at once. In many cases, it starts to struggle when it is quietly deprived of what it needs every single day. That means the problem is often deeper than people imagine. It is not just age, and it is not always bad luck. It can be less blood flow, lighter sleep, weaker hearing, less movement, less challenge, less connection, and a life that slowly becomes smaller without anyone noticing. The truth is, what looks like simple aging may sometimes be the brain asking for help in a language most people never learned to hear. And that is why this conversation matters so much. A major report published in 2024 suggested that nearly half of dementia cases worldwide may be preventable or delayed by addressing modifiable risk factors. That is not a promise, and I want to be very clear about that. But it is a powerful reminder that brain aging is not just fate, and that may be the most hopeful message an older adult can hear. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone in their late 70s or 80s and wondered why one person stays mentally sharp, curious, expressive, and present, while another seems to fade much faster? You won't believe how often the difference is not hidden in a fancy supplement bottle. It is hidden in ordinary routines, daily habits, and what the brain is or is not receiving hour by hour. Imagine a woman named Margaret, 76 years old, living alone after her husband passed away. She stopped going on her morning walks, her sleep became lighter, she turned the television up louder, and she stopped joining family conversations because hearing them became harder. Nothing dramatic happened in one day. But month by month, her world became quieter, smaller, and mentally thinner, and that is when memory started slipping more often. Now hold that image in your mind, because Margaret's story reveals the real conflict. The brain after 70 becomes more vulnerable to subtle deprivation. Blood vessels become less flexible, muscles weaken, sleep becomes more fragmented, vision and hearing often decline, and social circles may shrink after retirement, illness, or loss. Remember when I mentioned that the brain asks for help in a language most people miss? This is exactly what I meant. So today I want to narrow everything down to 3 things your brain needs more than anything else after 70. Not 10 things, not 50, 3. And wait for it, because the first one is so ordinary that many people underestimate it completely. Even though biologically, it may be one of the most powerful forms of brain support available. The first thing your brain needs is movement, not punishing workouts, not athletic performance, movement that improves blood flow, fuel delivery, oxygen supply, and the chemical signals that help the brain stay alive, flexible, and responsive. Your brain is not a battery that runs on hope. It is a living organ with a massive appetite for energy, and when circulation weakens, the brain feels that loss immediately. When you move your body, you do not just strengthen muscles. You change the internal conditions your brain lives in. Research has shown that physically active adults tend to have better brain glucose metabolism, meaning the brain may use fuel more efficiently, and activity is also linked with proteins that support brain health and favorable changes in memory-related brain structures. In plain language, movement helps feed the brain and helps it function more like a well-powered engine, instead of one running on fumes. But here is where many older adults get it wrong. They assume brain protective movement has to be intense, sweaty, dramatic, and exhausting. It does not. Some of the most effective routines are built from simple actions repeated consistently: brisk walking, climbing stairs, carrying groceries, standing up from a chair with control, light resistance training, gardening, balance practice, and even dancing in the kitchen when nobody is watching. The official recommendations can sound intimidating at first. Adults over 65 are generally encouraged to aim for 150 minutes a week of moderate activity or 75 minutes of vigorous activity, plus at least 2 days of muscle strengthening work and regular balance training. But when you break that down, it becomes far less overwhelming. 10 minutes after breakfast, 10 minutes after lunch, and 10 minutes after dinner already gives you 30 minutes in a day. And here comes the first mini climax. Many people think the brain only benefits after months of perfect discipline. The truth is, the brain begins responding to motion faster than most people expect. Even one walk can improve blood flow and shift mental state, and repeated movement creates a pattern the brain can build on. That means the door to change is not locked behind perfection. It opens the moment routine begins. Let me give you another example. Think of a man named Robert, age 81, who believed his memory was simply getting worse because he was old. He spent most of his days sitting, moved only when necessary, and felt weaker every month. Then his daughter convinced him to start walking for 10 minutes twice a day and doing sit-to-stands from a sturdy chair. 6 weeks later, he did not become a new man overnight, but he felt clearer, steadier, and more mentally awake. But here is the shocking part. Movement alone is not enough. A brain can get more blood flow during the day and still struggle if the night shift is failing. And this is where the second brain need becomes absolutely critical after 70. Your brain does not just need sleep in the sense of being in bed. It needs real restorative sleep, because that is when some of the deepest repair work happens. One of the biggest myths in aging is that older adults simply need less sleep. They do not. Most still need around 7 to 9 hours a night. The problem is not that the brain needs less sleep. The problem is that sleep often becomes lighter, shorter, and more fragmented with age, which means the brain may get less of the repair, memory processing, and restoration it depends on. Sleep is not passive. It is active brain maintenance. During healthy sleep, the brain helps sort information, strengthen memory, regulate mood, support attention, and shift into biological repair. Scientists have also become increasingly interested in the glymphatic system, a kind of waste clearance pathway in the brain, and evidence suggests this cleanup process may be especially active during sleep. So when sleep is broken night after night, the brain may not just feel tired, it may be missing critical restoration. You may have heard someone say, "I slept for 8 hours, so I'm fine." But time in bed and restorative sleep are not the same thing. A person can be in bed for a long time and still get poor quality sleep because of frequent waking, sleep apnea, restless legs, pain, alcohol, irregular sleep schedules, or medications that interfere with sleep architecture. The truth is, your brain does not count hours the way a clock does. It responds to quality. And wait for it, because this is where many people accidentally make things worse. They try harder to sleep instead of building the conditions that allow sleep to happen. They nap too late, use screens in bed, drink alcohol to get drowsy, have caffeine too late in the day, or lie awake worrying about not sleeping, which turns the bedroom into a stress chamber. Then they wonder why the mind feels cloudy the next morning. So what does better sleep look like in real life? It starts with a regular sleep and wake time, even on weekends. It improves with early daylight exposure, because morning light helps anchor the body clock, and it gets stronger when your body moves during the day. Add a quiet, dark bedroom, lighter evenings, less caffeine late in the day, less alcohol at night, and fewer heavy meals close to bedtime. And suddenly, you are working with biology instead of against it. But here is a warning many older adults need to hear. Knocking yourself out is not the same as getting restorative sleep. Some sleep medicines may help in the short term, but they can also come with risks such as grogginess, confusion, falls, and reduced alertness the next day, especially later in life. If you snore loudly, wake up choking, feel exhausted during the day, or struggle with insomnia for weeks, the answer is not guesswork. The answer is proper medical evaluation. Remember when I mentioned Margaret? Her sleep had started breaking apart long before her memory problems became obvious. She was waking up 3 or 4 times a night, turning on the television, and falling asleep again in a chair. She thought the issue was harmless because she was technically sleeping enough. But once her sleep became more regular, and once her doctor evaluated the patterns she had ignored, her daytime clarity improved more than her family expected. Now we come to the third need. And in many ways, it is the most emotional, the most overlooked, and the most human. After 70, your brain needs meaningful input, not noise, not endless television with half the dialogue missed, not passive hours that blur into each other. It needs conversation, challenge, novelty, purpose, and clear sensory signals so the brain has something worth processing. This matters because the brain is always adapting to the life it is living. When life becomes too repetitive, too isolated, too quiet, or too mentally undemanding, brain circuits may be used less often and with less intensity. That does not mean every quiet day is harmful, but chronic understimulation can become a problem, especially when it combines with loneliness, sensory loss, and routines that no longer challenge memory, attention, or emotional engagement. And here is the part that surprises people most. Social connection is not just nice for mood, it may be important for cognition. Real conversation requires listening, remembering, interpreting tone, reading emotion, predicting responses, finding words, and staying mentally flexible in real time. That is a remarkable workout for the brain, and it is very different from sitting silently in front of a screen for hours. So let me ask you something personal. How many truly engaging conversations have you had this week? Not short exchanges at the store. Not, did you take your pills? Not, what do you want for dinner? I mean real conversation with laughter, attention, memory, emotion, and exchange. Because the truth is, many older adults are not losing stimulation all at once. They are losing it in small, invisible pieces. But meaningful input is not only social, it is also cognitive challenge. The brain does better when it is asked to do something that is effortful, unfamiliar, and slightly uncomfortable. Learn a new recipe without looking at the instructions every second. Practice a new card game. Join a choir. Take photos and learn how to edit them. Try simple language lessons. Start a book club. Volunteer somewhere that requires you to remember names, solve small problems, and stay mentally present. Here is where the science gets especially interesting. In research on older adults, people who learned demanding new activities such as digital photography or quilting showed more improvement in memory than those who spent time only in social or less challenging activities. That does not mean quilting is magic. It means the brain responds when it has to stretch. The truth is, comfort is pleasant, but challenge is often what keeps neural circuits alive. Now let me give you a powerful pattern interrupt. Those popular brain game apps? They may be entertaining, and some structured training can help in specific ways, but many people use them as a substitute for real-world stimulation. That is a mistake. The brain wants challenge with meaning, consequence, and emotion. It wants you to care about the outcome. It wants you to listen, respond, create, remember, adapt, and sometimes struggle a little. And this is where the story takes an even more important turn. Sometimes the brain is not forgetting as much as it is straining. A person with hearing loss may look mentally withdrawn when the real problem is that conversation has become exhausting. They miss words, facial cues, emotional tone, and timing. Over time, they talk less, engage less, and receive less stimulation, and the brain begins paying a price for that silence. You won't believe how common this pattern is. A person starts saying, "Everyone mumbles now." Family members laugh it off. The television volume creeps higher. Phone calls become irritating. Group dinners become stressful. The person withdraws, not because they do not care, but because following speech takes so much effort that they leave the conversation mentally drained. And once that happens often enough, isolation begins doing quiet damage. That is why hearing and vision matter more than many families realize. Sensory health is brain health. If the brain is receiving muffled sound or blurred visual information, it must work harder just to interpret ordinary life. In some higher-risk older adults, hearing intervention has even been associated with a slower rate of cognitive decline over time. That does not mean hearing aids prevent dementia for everyone, but it does send a very strong message. Do not ignore sensory loss. Think about what happens when vision narrows too. People stop driving at night, stop going out as much, stop reading as much, stop noticing facial expressions, stop feeling confident in unfamiliar spaces, and stop taking part in activities that once kept them mentally alive. But here is the shocking part. Families often accept this shrinking world as normal aging, when in many cases it is exactly the kind of narrowing the brain suffers from most. So, if you are over 70, I want you to pause and ask yourself a difficult question. Is your brain truly being fed by life right now? Are you moving enough to improve blood flow? Sleeping deeply enough to restore memory and attention? Hearing clearly enough to stay engaged? Seeing clearly enough to participate with confidence? Learning anything hard enough to wake up your circuits? Or has life quietly become smaller, safer, and mentally thinner? Remember when I mentioned Robert? Once he started moving more, he slept better. Once he slept better, he had more energy to call friends and attend a weekly walking group. Once he became more socially engaged, he laughed more, listened more, and mentally sharpened in ways his family noticed before he did. That is the hidden power of these three needs. They do not work separately. They reinforce one another. Movement supports sleep. Sleep supports mood, attention, and memory. Better hearing and better connection make activity more enjoyable. More activity and connection improve sleep pressure at night. A challenged brain becomes a more awake brain. That is why the real goal is not to chase one magic solution. The real goal is to create a daily rhythm where the brain is fed, repaired, and challenged in ways that work together. Now let me give you 5 mistakes older adults make without realizing how much they cost the brain. First, they confuse inactivity with rest. Second, they stay in bed longer instead of improving sleep quality. Third, they accept hearing or vision loss as harmless inconvenience. Fourth, they replace meaningful challenge with passive entertainment. Fifth, they wait too long to act because the changes seem small. But small changes repeated for years can reshape an entire future. So what might a brain-supportive week actually look like? It could be daily walking, 2 days of light strength training, brief balance work near a counter, consistent sleep and wake times, a morning light routine, one social commitment, one mentally demanding hobby, and a hearing or vision check that has been overdue for far too long. That does not sound dramatic, and that is exactly why many people overlook it. Real protection often looks ordinary. But I also need to say something responsible here. Food and lifestyle can support healthier brain biology, but they do not replace medical care. If memory changes are rapid, if someone is getting lost, struggling with finances or medications, repeating the same question again and again, becoming confused, or showing sudden personality changes, please do not dismiss that as normal aging. That deserves real evaluation, because serious decline should never be ignored. And here is the good news I do not want you to miss. The goal is not perfection. The goal is response. The brain is not an on-off switch that either stays perfect or collapses forever. It is a living organ that responds to what you give it. Better inputs may not erase every problem, but they can change the direction of the story, and that possibility matters more than most people realize. So let's bring this home. After 70, your brain needs 3 things more than anything else: movement that keeps blood and fuel flowing, restorative sleep that helps memory and repair, and meaningful input through connection, challenge, and clear senses. Not fear, not hype, not miracle pills. The truth is far more practical and far more powerful. Feed the brain, repair the brain, and challenge the brain before life quietly shrinks around it. I'm Dr. Liana, and now I want to hear from you. Which of these 3 does your brain need most right now? More movement, better sleep, or more meaningful connection and stimulation? Put your answer in the comments, because your response may help someone else realize what they have been missing too. And if this message opened your eyes, subscribe, share this with someone over 70, and remember this line the next time you worry about aging. Your brain still responds when you give it what it has been waiting for.